Hello and welcome. This is the Brattlecast. I'm Jordan Rich, and with me, of course, is Ken Gloss, the proprietor of the famous Brattle bookshop in Boston, brattlebookshop.com. And of course, if you're listening to this in the winter of 2026, you may be listening to it in the summer of 2029, but in the winter of 2026, we just had a big storm, the biggest storm, I think, in 10 years. And Ken, my first question is, did you guys stay open through all this?
One of the things I wanted to talk about in this podcast is just a little bit of the nuts and bolts of running a store, what happens, things that affect it. And I'll tell you, a 2-foot snowstorm has its effect. And were we open? Well, sort of. And I'll sort of give an idea of what it's like to run a store and how we look at it and how we go about it. A few people have actually said, when I've done a few podcasts like this, that they enjoy, how does the store run? Well, we knew that it was going to snow. I mean, the weather predictions were right up there, and they were saying there was going to be a big snowstorm. You hope that they were wrong by a few miles, but it kept getting worse and worse. And then they also said it was going to be brutally cold. So on Saturday at the store, and it was supposed to start snowing Sunday. Saturday at the store, it was about 4 or 5 degrees in the morning, almost zero. First of all, weather-wise, we didn't open the outside as much as we usually do because we were afraid too many customers might actually look and the staff might start getting frostbite. So that was the first sign that the weather was going to affect things. And then I was home on Sunday, and they said it was going to start at about 3. And all of a sudden, at about 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon, I looked out the window at my home, and you couldn't look out the window barely. The snow just kept coming and coming and coming. But what we had told everybody on Friday and Saturday the week before, we said, we are going to be at the store working on Monday, regardless of how much snow. As a matter of fact, I said, because of how much snow. I said, I want everybody to be safe. I don't want anyone to take any risks physically, but I would like everybody to come in, especially if the transit in Boston is running. And I said, it's not that I expect a customer to be there. It's not that I expect, people to be walking by. What I expect is that maybe we can shovel enough so that maybe we can open on Tuesday. One of the things about people who haven't been to the store, we have a small sidewalk in front of the store, but we have a large lot next to the store that's an empty lot where we have the books that go outside. And that's about a 1,300 square foot lot. And not only do you have to shovel the snow out of it, but you also have to do it in such a way that it's absolutely clear, because when we put the stands out, which we want to do, you can't have ice in there and people falling down. So that's one of the things. So I got into work at about 6 in the morning. I walked in. The sidewalks were barely passable. I had heat warmers in my feet with my shoes. I had them in my gloves. I had a lot of my ski clothes on. I had my long underwear on. And I managed to get in. Now, one of the things I'm always worried about when that happens is, are the locks going to freeze? I mean, we do a lot to keep that from happening. We were fine. Locks didn't freeze. We had left the heat up. Usually overnight, we turn the heat down at night. But when it's going to be, 0, 5 degrees out, we leave the heat up overnight. So I go through, and then I go up to the roof with one of my employees that they got in around 9, went up to the roof. We had to shovel a lot of the roof off. Not so much because of the weight, but there's one drain on our flat roof, and we have to make sure that stays open. So we shovel around that. We don't want ice dams up on the roof. And then we have an upper roof above our elevator. I only do this with someone there. I have to climb up a steel ladder to get up there, and there's gutters all around it. 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, we had huge snowstorms, one right after the other. One of the things that happened that it had never happened before, those gutters overflowed so much and it stayed so cold that the water dripped down and the door to the roof froze shut. And I literally had to get a sledgehammer to pound against it to open the door so we could get out to the roof. So that's one aspect of the shoveling. And then of course, there were I was really concerned about one of our employees showing up, although he's a great guy. He's an MAA fighter, and he had a fight over the weekend. And we were afraid that he'd be too beaten up. He came in with a couple of black eyes, but he did make it in.
What an interesting situation. A guy who works at one of the classiest bookstores in America is also an MMA fighter. I love that.
Mixed martial art, but he's a great guy. We got the snowblower going. We figured out that we could not clear the whole lot because when we were piling snow up in the sidewalk, it was getting so high that we couldn't keep piling more snow on it without it all falling into the street and blocking the street. So on one side, if anyone shows up and before you hear this and we haven't completely cleared out, one side of our outside is covered in snow. But that morning, by about 1 PM, we were ready to roll out the carts. We had 1 or 2 people come into the store. And we realized that the only people coming into the store on Monday morning were there because their flights were canceled, and nobody else was open or even in the stores. It was backbreaking work. I mean, literally shoveling.
Well, it speaks to the essence of having your own business. I mean, your business is such a well-known one, but it's a solo-owned business with family and friends and good workers, and you have to do it or you don't succeed. You have to do all this, and it pays off.
Yeah, it pays off. Also, during when I came in the sidewalk, it wasn't piled up quite as high as some of the other sidewalks, and we're good friends. There's a hotel next to us. And depending on who the person working for the hotel is, we're friendly with a lot of them. Sometimes they'll run their snowblower another 15, 20 feet and do it. So I know someone did early in the storm, but it just kept coming and coming. At first I said to the staff, we're going to stay open until about 4:30 because they were predicting another 4 inches of snow, like between 11 and 2. And I said, I'd like to get that cleaned up. By about 1:30, it was very obvious that snow wasn't going to start for another few hours. We closed up that day because I knew that the public transportation, although it was running very slow. Everybody, I think, was going to have sore muscles the next day from doing all the shoveling. And when we came in on Tuesday morning, there was another 4 inches of snow to shovel to figure out where we were going to put it, how we were going to do it. My employees always sort of kid me because in the basement of the store, we probably have about 50 to 60 50-pound containers of ice melt. And I'm always paranoid, and I way over order it because I'm always afraid that there's going to be like 3 or 4 more storms like this. And come the beginning of March, we're going to run out of ice melt. I'll tell you, we're doing all right. I've still got about 40.
The last couple of years have been rather dull regarding snowstorms and snow depths. I have one question, though. Did you get much work done in the store because you were there?
On Monday, no. We got to drink a lot of coffee and tea and went out for, fortunately, Dunkin' Donuts was open down the street. The work literally was nonstop for about 6 hours, just shoveling, putting down ice melt, moving snow around, checking that drains weren't clogged. But I will tell you, the next day, Tuesday, when we went in, it took us only a good part of the morning to get open. And then we were all there. And it was, quite honestly, it was pretty quiet. It was, I think when we got in the morning, it was 5 degrees. And it got all the way up to maybe 18 or 20. So it was a quiet day. And I had a section in the basement that I'd been meaning to get to. It was one of those places where you put books and you goes, I'll get to those. But they're not really the best books because those you get to right away. And I said, I just want to go through all of this and just get it out of the way. So I spent a couple of hours. I got through everything. And when I got to the bottom shelf, the last one, I guess it was totally unexpected. I looked down at the bottom, and there's a little plastic folder that had a few cards in the folder. There were 12. They were all baseball cards of Babe Ruth. I had no idea they were there. I have no idea where we got them. They could have been there for years and years. I would tell you, it actually will prove to be a very profitable day.
I can see that. My goodness, you found the babe in the woods, as they say. Those Babe Ruth cards, what are they worth, do you think?
Well, I talked and consulted with a lot of my friends from the Antiques Roadshow, and actually, it's going to be a really good. They're predicting it probably be $10,000 to $20,000, and the way I look at it, it will pay for the ice melt.
Goes to show you that things happen for a reason, perhaps, and at least everybody was safe. And one more thing, if people meet you for the first time and they're expecting to see the Incredible Hulk with all those muscles and everything, because you're always working and schlepping and doing all that.
Well, I try to stay in good shape. I will say, though, you remember the big storms in 1978 when Boston was shut down for a week in basically a hurricane and snow. But in 2015, which is 11 years ago, we got 9 feet of snow in February. And so I sort of knew what the game plan was for this. But one of the things that happens, and a lot of times you get stories out of this. One of my stories is I found Babe Ruth under 2 feet of snow. In 2015, we had snow piled so high that it looked like we had a wall of snow in front of the store. And one of our employees posted on Instagram, "Winter is coming," and showed a wall of snow. Very soon it was retweeted by Game of Thrones.
Oh my goodness, winter, of course. That was Snowmageddon. Let's hope we don't have a repeat, even though it's early as we record this early in the winter. You made it through and you found Babe Ruth and all that, so it's a good ending.
They're predicting another storm possibly coming up in a few days. And it's coming up from the south, and they're not sure whether it's going to stay far enough south to just get us a little or a lot. I've put a fan up on the roof pointing south to push it, to keep it out of Boston.
But at least you have enough ice melt. That's the important thing, right?
Have plenty of ice melt, and my muscles will have recovered to do it again.
A day in the life. That's Ken Gloss. I'm Jordan Rich, and you've been listening to the Brattlecast.